Well, good evening. This is my first webinar with Dr. Deb Carlin. She is a promoted psychologist and real scientist. So it's great to have each other. Um, I'm just a nerd in this field, really. My name is Swier. If you haven't seen me before, I'm a coach and I help to try people to understand how to create a reality. We just met recently, last week, really,
Yeah,
and we had a wonderful conversation. So we said, well, let's talk about this more because there's so much to explore and there's so much to discover. And Deb, can I give you the floor? You can introduce yourself a little bit.
oh, that's fabulous. We can say all we want about social media, but when you use it really well and you use it with good intent, this is one of the results. You and I met on LinkedIn, and it was just, there was an immediate draw, something in the verbiage. And it's always great to see a person's photograph and look, and we can size one another up from there. And we just started talking, and it was magical. Uh, in my work as a doctor of psychology, and with my whole emphasis being on where we align, wanting to help people understand that this thing that sits atop our neck is our entire universe and control central. If you can just learn how to do the operating system, you've got it made. You can have whatever you want, whenever you want in this life experience. And yeah, really, our conversation was so magical that once we were 3 minutes into it, I said, we got to record this and we got to say it. We got to keep talking and sharing this with people because it's great energy. It's smart. There's nothing ridiculous here. It's all fun, but it's really, really going to be helpful to people. And we need to align, converse, share, and not just uplift people, but give people some credible direction and ideas and skills that they can learn each time we have a conversation.
Wonderful, wonderful, Deb. Can we start right at the beginning? Because what I'm always so astonished about is that if we look at approaching this from the psychology angle, most of the time, please
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, but most of the time, this is looked at from the behavior angle, let's call it that way. We look at behavior of people and say, oh, he's got this behavior, so that's going wrong with him, that's going on. And I don't agree with that. Uh,
Mm.
um, um, uh, I think before the behavior, there's something else happening in the black box. And the black box is our thinking and our feeling, as I've been taught from the three principles from Sydney Banks.
Yeah.
And the sad thing is that still there's so many people clinging on to that, and it's not helping them because they are looking at the symptoms and they're not looking at the cause. And can you
Uh,
elaborate on that?
Absolutely right up my alley. Um, I love the study of the human condition. And even as an undergraduate, I wanted to read the original works of everybody who created psychiatry and psychology. And so I did, in addition to whatever textbooks there were that were available. And the tragic part is that as people take one, two, and then many, many steps away from the original speaker, the original author, they miss so much. So there's misinterpretation. One of the things that I don't do with people and have never really found reasonability in, and there's all kinds of evidence why this is correct thinking. If what you do is you go into somebody's office for an appointment, you're going to 45 minutes or 50 minutes or an hour, a full hour if you're lucky. Um, the session is about going through what was wrong, what's wrong. and your behaviors and how do you feel about that? And then eliciting a lot of emotions that are in actuality digging deeper ruts neurologically, seriously, physically in your memory and in your whole chemistry, releasing neurotransmitters that are solidifying those neural networks. And then people wonder why they've been in therapy for, years and years and years, and they're getting worse, and they're diving deeper and diving. Well, it's because like the truck, you run it through the mud. Well, you got to wait for the mud to dry and then like level it out and then drive again, but don't drive in the same ruts. Take a different path. So what I think is unfortunate is that I always introduce myself as a doctor of psychology. I do not want people to misinterpret that I'm a clinician. I'm going to do therapy. I'm well trained in all that, and I've got certifications and all that. But my path is more of a holistic perspective with absolute science being right at the middle of it, and psychoneuroimmunology, psychoneuroendocrinology, neuropsychology, and incredible things that we can do to help people understand that where they're at comes about because of a perception that they have. And people say, but it's the truth. It's a perception. you
Yeah,
know?
it's
And if
your
we look at it,
reality.
yeah, yeah, if we look
It's
at
your
it that way,
reality. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, right? Yeah, we understand where attitudes come from, and everybody thinks, oh, but that's just me. No, no. Think of me like a television tuner from the 1950s. We can adjust your tune, we can adjust your attitude.
Absolutely. And it's
Yeah.
so important that we start to understand that because all that is learned.
Yes, that's right.
I had this lady who came to me who'd been suffering from panic attacks for 23 years. She even developed a drinking habit as a result of that because it relieved her stress.
Yeah.
She got the drinking habit under control, but she was still suffering from panic attacks. I had one conversation with him, only one. And after that, I've never had a panic attack after that. Yes, I feel something a little bit uneasy,
Yeah.
but I don't have any panic attack because you explained to me I'm creating this myself because I'm trying to live in the future. I'm trying to position what's going to happen, which isn't true 99 of 100 times or 999 times, of 1,000 times. I've seen
Right.
it with myself. I'm wrong all the time about my own predictions. And the sad thing is, our brain is a prediction engine. It's trying to predict what's going on. It's even trying to predict what I'm, now you should say, saying. But yes, that's what's happening. But you're all probably already thinking that because our brain is constantly predicting, and that's what I learned last week from Dr. Lisa Feldman, Earth. She said our brain is constantly predicting what's going to happen in the near future, and that gives us a quietness of mind.
Mhm.
It quietens our mind, and that's what we're looking for. And the sad thing is, it's not true.
Yeah.
And once you learn that there is no point in trying to predict the future because you are wrong all the time, so just stop it. There's this little video of this an old American series. There was this psychologist who's getting a client in his practice. He says, "Yes, I'm afraid of being buried alive in a box."
Oh, you're talking about the Bob Newhart show.
Yes, that's it, Bob Newhart. Yeah, absolutely.
I've
Yeah, you
seen
probably
that.
recognize. And he said,
Absolutely.
just stop it. And that's all there is to it, really. And it's so amazing. It's so à point. It's so on to the point. This is what's going on. We are creating this. And the funny thing is, what I'm trying to do is I try to help people to understand we create with our thinking a world. And that
Yeah.
world is constantly created from our memory. So it's all stale information, really. And we create that world in our head, in our sound. And the sad thing is, what we hear, what comes in through our ears, is not what we hear. What we hear is in our head.
Yeah, there you go.
And the silly thing is, we create that image, that sound, that smell, that feeling, etc., etc. All that is created in our head. And once we learn, we create this, so we can also create something different. And that's so important. Because then,
Exactly. You know, two things come to mind.
yes,
When
go
I
ahead.
was in high school, somebody gave me a book. It was about an inch thick, and it was, not very big, maybe like 8 by 8. And it was called Be Here Now.
Yeah,
And so I open it up, I start reading it. Every page, it says Be Here Now, forward, from the left to the right, from the right to the left, in a swirl, upside down, backwards. And I remember going through it and I was like, I was livid. Yeah, I remember throwing the book across the room and saying, this is the dumbest book ever. And then I read it again. And then I thought to myself, well, wait a second.
what's going
So
on here?
the more that I have thought about this over the decades, right? There is a real truth in the power of be here now. Because if you're future tripping or being stuck in the past, you can't utilize your talents right here that you have available to you, and you miss so much.
Yeah.
And it's tragic, really,
Well, what you're
right?
doing, you're putting on blinders. That's what
And
you're doing. That's what.
yes, yeah, totally. And then the other part of it is if you stop and think for a moment that everything that we are doing right now in both of our rooms, everything that's in here, this technology that we're using, this was all just once in someone's head.
Yeah.
Every bit of it was in someone's mind. They thought of it, they focused on it, they produced it. My glasses, my clothes, your earbuds, every single thing. So we forget that power, that influence. People talk about, well, I want to manifest. I want to learn how to manifest. You've been doing it since you were born. You
Yes.
were you were manifesting your exit out of the womb when you were being born. We getting tight in there. You wanted to come out and stretch. So we are all masters of our mind, and we are masters of our life. We just need to connect with it in ways that really are powerful and make sense and put doubt
And
over
to
to the
give
side.
that some sort of a proof, as a species, the Homo
Yeah.
sapiens, as we exist for about 300,000 years. That's the recent most recent stuff I found about our existence.
Okay.
We have been here for 300,000 years. We are by far not the strongest and not the smartest animal on the planet. Still, we dominate this planet. How can that be? How can we dominate this planet if we're not the strongest? Because there are viruses which are much more powerful than we are. There are animals which are smarter than we are. How can it be? How is that possible? Because we can adjust in the moment. We know how to deal with stuff. And we're not always wonderfully successful, but most of the time, more often than not, we are successful. And that's how we got here.
Well,
And, and, and it's so important that we realize we are masters of creating stuff.
yeah. So combine that with critical thinking skills and combine that with the love and the passion that we have. And we are set apart from any other species, any other anything.
And,
That critical thinking ability, right? And the power of our heart. I mean, we can live or die according to love.
yes, absolutely. And there's still another thing. When I was 2 years into this understanding about of the principles, I sat here in this very spot one morning, and my head went silent, totally silent. There was no thought in that brain, and it's amazing what happened. Because at first I was shocked because what's going on? My brain's not working anymore. Then I thought, wait a minute, I'm thinking now my brain's working, so something's still working.
Yeah,
And then I
really.
realized, wait a minute, I've got access to quietness in my head.
Yeah.
And since then, I've never left that. And the great thing about that is I'm no longer worried or bothered by my non-helping thoughts, which means that I'm much more open to any kind of thought. And it's the amazing thing is I get an additional 30 to 75% of thinking capacity, which makes my thinking much more easy because I've got plenty of more time to think about stuff. And there is this amazing feature we have. We can connect to, I think, I call it insightful thinking.
Mhm.
And most people know it when they are going for a walk or they're having a shower in the morning or they do meditation. They get these insights, these thoughts that come from nowhere, but suddenly, oh yes, eureka, there I
Yeah,
found
yeah.
this. And that's what, for instance, an Einstein must have had, and Beethoven and Bach and Mozart, those genius minds. We all have access to that. It's different levels, of course. We're not all geniuses, but we have some sort of access to that. And why are we throwing that away?
So for all of our members of the audience that are watching and listening, we're hoping that we spark your interest, we get you intrigued, that you're still sitting here with us moments into this conversation. And I think that what we want to do is we want to give people the insight to think about this and then skills that they can practice so they can achieve peace of mind and that quiet to realize their creativity, to realize their ability to quiet the mind and let the body heal from whatever it is, if it's a headache or gut or an injury, whatever it is, and find peace in there. And then how they can also use that quiet space for
Reflection.
yeah, reflection, solutions.
Absolutely.
So what is your favorite method for doing that? Do you have one?
What I do is I often use the video from what's his name? Anil Seth. He's a professor of neurology, I think, from
What
the
is his
university.
name?
Anil Seth. He's doing some research into consciousness. He calls it consciousness. I call it experience. But he's
Okay.
doing research in consciousness in the University of Sussex. He's got a lab there, and
Okay.
he had a TED talk. There's a TED talk of his name. We hallucinate our way through life.
Oh, really?
And I use that little movie to explain to people that we create our experience constantly, and if it's influenced by anything, it will change. And he shows that because he uses a simulation there to create a relationship with people who are walking around in a campus, and suddenly you see all kinds of dogs showing up on unexpected series. But that's what, for instance, someone who is suffering from high stress could be experiencing, or even a psychosis. It could be. I've had a customer with psychosis, and she's never had a psychosis attack again after she had the first one.
So
But
what does he teach you to do in that video?
he shows you that we create our experience from our own prediction because we're trying to predict the future constantly because it's related to our safety system, our
Mm-hmm.
survival. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why it feels very important. And that's it. Yes, it is important, of course, but you can always judge what is going on. And if something is a crisis, you will respond to it. You won't think a second about that. You will respond to that. But all the rest is nonsense. So just be very careful with what happens to you. Judge it. And the funny thing is, what happens after some time, your brain will learn I can ignore all those non-helping thoughts. Non-helping thoughts will always have the same result. They'll make you feel awful. They cost heaps of time because you're trying to solve them, and it's 1 microvolt in your brain or something like that. I don't know what the voltages are in your brain, but something like that. It takes a lot of energy. I don't know about you, but when I've had a fight with someone, I'm spent afterwards.
Oh yeah.
And afterwards, I was thinking, what happened here? How could I go there? What was was triggering me? I don't understand. And it's worthless. And as soon as you start to understand that, you can just discard those non-helping thoughts.
Mhm.
And there's a fail-safe way to judge those. It's by your feeling. Our feeling tells if something's okay or not. And if it's not feeling okay, just don't pay attention to it as long as it's not a bus driving at you.
Right, right. Yeah, and people often mistakenly think, well, it's a thought in there. I don't have control over it. It's just there.
Yeah, and but the problem is
Yeah.
it's our only way to make sense of the world. Our thinking helps us to make sense of what's happening to us.
Yeah,
So we're taking it seriously.
so we really have the capacity to say no.
Yeah,
Like if I go into negative thinking, stinking thinking, as I have sometimes called it, I
wonderful.
will literally, like go, no, not doing that. Nope, tap my fingers or wave a hand in front of my face to catch my attention or get up and move, go for a
Yeah.
walk or pet my dog or do something that I know is going to produce something different. I love that. And one of the things that I was just talking about this morning with some coaches is they were
Hmm.
talking about the ways in which when somebody comes to them because they're stuck, they're trying to get them unstuck and get them to sustain that progression into better well-being. And one of the things that I said to them was the additional component of allowing people to not only get through what's the drama in the trauma, but sustain the peace of mind is if we help them change the story in their head. So as they're thinking about the trauma, they can actually revisualize it. So for instance, if someone says, and I was just 11 years old and this person was screaming at me and they were kicking me and it was horrible and they were bullying me. Okay, do you remember what it was about? Well, they give you the impression that the 11-year-old had, and it's very difficult for them to now give it to you as a 30 or 40 or 50 or 60-year-old.
Mm.
And so what you do is you use your positive influence to say, could it be? And you create like this instantaneously. Could it be that it really wasn't about you? It was about them being frustrated with themselves. Did they actually physically make contact with you? Well, no, but they were trying to kick me. Okay, so you didn't get physically injured. Well, maybe not. Okay, well, what if you actually didn't get physically injured? But how would that change the story here? Oh, right. So maybe that person was screaming at you to keep you in a safe to protect you.
Yeah.
Now, this can sound outlandish to people when they hear this, but there's no negative outcome to rewriting the story in a more positive way so the person can be released from it, have a different interpretation, then a different attitude. And then you add the reality that, okay, do you understand that the way that you remembered it as a younger version of yourself, even if it was 2 days or 2 decades, it doesn't matter. There are neurotransmitters that have been released into your brain that make you feel safe that you know that story. And it's an explanation for you for anything and everything.
Yeah. And so you take
How
the hook
about
off. Yeah.
exactly if we take the hook off and we now release serotonin instead of cortisol?
Yeah.
So you're
Absolutely.
not getting stressed and being unhappy. You're releasing something and feeling empowered and joyful about it. And it's like,
What happened here? Yeah.
exactly, right?
And the silly thing is, we think that our memory is a constant thing, and it isn't, because
Yeah, it
we
changes.
recreate it all the time because
Yeah,
it's a live thing.
it's very
It's
alive.
really alive. It's a construct. I call it my construct, my card house.
Yeah,
And sometimes I take cards out here and there, and then put it another card in. And as long as it doesn't collapse, everything is okay.
right there you go.
And the funny thing is, once you start to understand that that whole card house is a creation of myself, I can also decide to do something different
Yeah.
because it's your card house, not
Yeah, you
mine.
can knock the whole thing down actually.
You can, but yeah, it's a bit hard. It you can, but the problem is a lot of those behaviors you show or natural habits you have are related to that whole system. So it feels very estranging to do something like that
Yes.
because then a whole of we think that our basis is gone, and that's why I do the direct path from. It's an approach I use to help people understand that they are consciousness. They are
So
nothing more than that. That's a
what
very
does that look like?
it's an exercise, a really a simple exercise where we say, okay, can you see that your experiences happen to you? So what you see is not what you are really drawing in, but it's happening to you because if you close your eyes, you can't see anything. And if you open
Mm,
your eyes, you can see stuff in front of you and you can focus on that stuff, focus on a nose, for instance, and you can look at that nose and see, oh, he's got a big nose or whatever. It doesn't matter. And and you can zoom out again and you can see the whole picture. And you can do that with all your senses and just focus in and zoom out. And then
mhm.
suddenly you see, wait a minute, I'm experiencing this through my senses. My senses are telling me this. And
Right.
that's very interesting because I don't have to take this seriously. Because there's another thing which is very important. We only see, well, even less than 1% of the actual visual, well, what's there to see. Let's call it that way. We have a very restricted way of looking at stuff. So what we are seeing is our interpretation of that. But if I would say, imagine an apple, you would immediately have the image of an apple in front of you, and you would say, oh, this is an apple. The funny thing is, the apple we are looking at from different perspectives, they are more or less the same. How can that be? There must be something of a common ground we all have where we derive that from, where we get that from. So
Mm-hmm.
the funny thing is, what is leading that? And that's our awareness, our consciousness, which is the basis, and it has never changed throughout your life. When you were 5 years old, you're 5 years old, you had also an experience, which is different, of course, because you had a different person, different body, different thoughts, different experiences. But then you became 13 or 15, and you had a different experience again. But the consciousness was still there. So that's your basis. That's the base which is always there, which never deserts you. And I've had a very strange experience. I've been in an accident about 23, 25 years ago, 25 years ago, and I've had a near death experience. So my my spirit has left my body at that stage, and I saw a different thing, area, whatever. I was unconscious at that stage and was transported in an ambulance to the hospital. But the funny thing is, I was still conscious. And that consciousness stays and it never leaves you. You are consciousness, nothing else. We are living in consciousness. Our body is in this consciousness. You can also notice when someone gets too close to you.
Mm-hmm.
You don't feel them physically, but you still know that this person is too close to me for comfort. So we have much more than that, and that consciousness is our basis and which is always there. And once you learn to get back to that consciousness, you get quiet. And we all
Mm-hmm.
know it because you can see it when you wake up in the morning, your thinking hasn't started yet. There's this vastness in your brain. I don't know about you, but I find it's wonderful to wake up in the morning and my brain's not thinking yet. And I'm
Right.
enjoying that moment where I have this vastness in my, well, awareness, I call it, and there's no boundary. There is no boundary.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And that's so beautiful. And I sometimes have it during the day even. When I'm in nature, for instance, you can fully enjoy nature to the best of your ability. And you suddenly hear more, you see more, you smell more, you feel more. And it's amazing how that happens. And we all have that. We all have that awareness. So you can always go back to that. And it's not judging you. It's not judging.
So the idea that in terms of the skill set that we can deliver to people is to start with that premise and to allow yourself that period of time when you are first awakening before you get up and have to do anything.
Yeah.
If you just simply be, I recommend that people stay laying back, put their hand or hands over their chest, over their heart, feel their breathing, and start out right from the get-go with gratitude. I am
Yeah.
so grateful. I'm awake, I'm alive, I'm breathing. This feels lovely. I feel gratitude for, and then go on a rant for everything you feel grateful for. And that expands the mind into, I want to travel further. I'm in flight. I like this floating space.
Yeah.
And there's nothing at that point to worry about. You've literally blocked you put up your boundaries and said, this is peace
Yeah,
and
it
nothing
is.
will come in here.
Absolutely. It's so beautiful that we can experience that. And we should be so grateful that we get this vessel, let's call it that way, this body,
It is
and it makes it possible that we experience, well, all these physical things like well, eating, drinking, smelling, tasting, feeling,
feeling. Yeah.
all those beautiful things we can experience as humans. And we can't have that when you're just awareness.
Mm.
When you're just awareness, you're nothing. You can't cut awareness in two. There's no way you can do that because it's nothing. It's nothing physical.
So one of the things that I've done in my work over the decades is run psychophysiology labs, done beautiful, wonderful research on what is it that we can get people to understand that they have control over. Because a lot of people think, well, it's my body, I don't have control. Like I just get headaches, I just get stomach aches, I just have high blood pressure. Well, how about if we put a blood pressure on you? And we train you to walk through while you're sitting there with this cuff on. You will take that blood pressure now and record it over here and your heart rate and record that over here. And how about if we teach you a relaxation exercise and we
Yeah.
to doing this mental exercise and people follow along because they're seated and you're talking to them and you're guiding them through and it takes about 15 minutes
Hmm.
and then you take the blood pressure again and they go, wow, you mean like my blood pressure? I guess my blood pressure went down because I was being quiet. Okay, well, how about if we do it again and nobody will be talking to you? You just stay in your head over there and do it on your own. Oh, when
Yeah.
it goes up, why? Because what you're learning is that you have influence over your physiology through what you're doing in your mind. And it's so beautiful because what people come to discover is that that concept is generalizable.
Hmm.
You can have control over your mind. It influences your blood pressure, your heart rate, your gastric activity in your throat, in your
Hmm.
chest, gut, and it just generalizes out from there. And it's amazing. People like Louise Hay
Yeah.
started talking, half a century ago about heal your mind, heal your body. The people like Dr. Joe Dispenza and Dr. taken all of that and just really expanded those realities so that in my world, in my life, the way that I do things, I don't want people to feel limited
Oh,
by anything. As a matter of fact, I started a business this last year called No Limitations Ever because I want people to believe it.
yeah. And the sad thing about it is that we are drawn back into the traditional way of looking at this every time, again and again, and it's not necessary. And and there's also one part of it. It's very seductive of being drawn back into it. So what I t- it's I tell my clients very often. I say it's your ego. It's your ego which is trying to get you back into your traditional way of doing things because your brain's trying to reduce the amount of energy you're using in your brain. Those 3 pounds of material in your head are using 20% of your energy when you're doing nothing, when you're lying in bed. So as soon as you started to think, your brain's like, wait a minute, I don't have that much energy anymore. I'm going to restrict that. So I'm going to, oh, you better sit still and don't make too much fuss because otherwise you won't be able to breathe anymore. Well, that's nonsense, of course, but still,
Right, 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 right.
it's what your brain is telling you. And so what I also tell my people is, don't believe your brain. Your brain has only one goal, is to keep your body alive. And I often say, maybe your brain doesn't even know what you're thinking. And that's a strange one.
That's
That's
very unusual.
that's very quite revolutionary, I think. But I get the feeling that our brain doesn't even know what we are thinking. We can't position where we think in our brain. We see a lot of activity in the brain. We can measure a lot of activity, but we can't say that's where your consciousness resides. That's where you're thinking about whatever is resides. It's very hard for us to pinpoint that. There's a lot of activity going on, of course, in our brain, and I think it's much more a sort of a receptor than that's, and it's a stimulator, that thinking we do, but we can't position it in our body, actually.
So what do you do to control your mind and your thoughts? Are you the master of your mind?
Most of the time, yes, but I'm still very human, and sometimes I step into the trap, and I could get dep depressed about stuff, about a silly movie I'm seeing, and getting very sad about it. I think, yeah, well, that's also okay, and I can feel some emotions, and hopefully, because
That's
I know,
good.
yeah,
That's
it's
a
what,
good part. Yeah, I mean, you're following the movie and doing what the movie people wanted you to
yeah,
feel.
but
So
I
that's a
had,
good
yeah, and
example.
sometimes I have discussion with people, and they have a very sad story, and I feel with them and say, yeah, but on the other hand, this is also very made up. This is
Yeah.
your story. I understand that it's feeling that way, but it's not my story. And I don't have to go along with you. And then they
So a
say,
lot
well,
of
that's
people,
that's very unfriendly. I said, I might, but is it helping you when I'm starting to cry with you? It's not
right,
helping you.
right. So yeah, compassion and then getting carried away with people. Um, I think sometimes that people who call themselves empaths, which I object to, the word is empathy,
Yeah,
and you are not an empath. You might have empathetic feelings, but that just means to temporarily put yourself in the shoes of another.
yeah,
So the people who call themselves empaths often talk about how they get sick because they're such empaths that they're going overboard. And my reaction to that is quit calling yourself an empath and be compassionate, but you don't need to step into it all the time.
absolutely.
The other part that seems to make reasonable sense to me is if we're going to be the master of our mind, we need to be determined that we have a basket full of tools that we use at any given moment to be able to take control of our mind. So one of the things is my tool is I'll snap my fingers or I'll clap my hands or I'll wave my hand up or I'll get up and move. But some of the other ones are understanding that the vagus nerve is the longest nerve in our body. And if you take your fingers and you rub them behind your ears
Good.
up and
Yeah,
down, you
yeah.
are actually activating your vagus nerve. I
Okay.
defy you to stay jacked up while you're doing that. You should feel little chills running through your body.
Yeah.
You're activating the vagus nerve and calming things down. Your diaphragm is dropping. Your lungs have more capacity then to fill more space with air because they're not being restricted up by an uptight body that's got the
Mm-hmm.
diaphragm up high. Um, Another thing is to use your hands to massage your hands
Mm-hmm.
and to be able to run up and down each finger and the palm of your hand and embrace your hand and feel what it is that's there and know that you're hitting it's your peripheral nervous system. It's just like reflexology in your
Mm.
feet. You know, all of our nerve endings end up in our hands as well as in our feet. And if you're massaging them, you're activating relaxation as well as stimulation in every part of your body. So those are tools that I use. Now, here's a really interesting one. This comes from a program called Positive Intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And it's positive psychology. And what you do is you put your hands together and you try to feel your fingerprints,
Mm-hmm.
the ridges in your fingers as you're
Yeah.
doing it. And
Yeah.
at first it feels kind of funny. And then you start sort of traveling and it's like, well, that's kind of interesting. Wow, what's going on in there? And as you do that, you're changing your focal point. All those things, when you do them and you practice them and you pull that toolkit out for yourself whenever you start to
Yeah.
slide into the negative zone of thinking and feeling, you're mastering your mind. You're saying, wait a second. Okay, I love fly fishing. I'm casting the line. I'm reeling those thoughts back in. I'm going to be the master here. So I want our audience to take that away with them.
Absolutely. And it's so much about distracting you from your own thinking, really.
Yes, exactly.
And I try to bring it to people to say, okay, we have thoughts, and that's fine because it helps us maneuver ourselves through the world, and it makes
Right,
us make sense, and we can make, as I call it in Dutch, we can make chocolate of the world if we if we
right.
use our thinking, and 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 it's important that we do that, but we also need to be aware of that's also going to hinder us if we don't pay attention. So pay
Exactly.
attention to your thinking and see what it can bring because it can also bring so much value and so much happiness and so much gratefulness because we are so gifted.
Mm.
We have no idea of how gifted we are. And that's such a shame, really. And I've seen this happening with people in my practice, and I've taught them to relax more in their work, for instance, and they suddenly say, "Wait a minute, I don't need to bother about this." No, you don't. Wow, that's interesting. And now, well, you just go about your things, what you want to do or what you know don't want to do. I don't mind. It's your life. Please do what you're doing, but just see that you don't need to bother so much. Because if we're trying to live in the future, you're always getting anxious. If we're living in the past, you're always going to be sad. It's the same story. If I get people who get to me who are depressed, they're living in the past all the time. If there coming people to me who are anxious, they're living in the future because they're trying to predict the future. But our brain has no capacity of predicting the future correctly. A bit, a little bit.
You
But
know, one of the things that I do when I'm talking to people and listening to them, they've
mhm,
decided that they want to work with me. And so I'll ask them a series of questions just to get the grounding of where are you at and what it is that's happened. And we'll start down this path and then we're getting somewhere and they'll reach out and grab in this story and that story and that story and that story. And I'll say, now I don't want to be rude and interrupt you, but I'm going to ask you to pause. We're taking a walk down this lane, this road. You're telling me your story. And yet you're picking up garbage from alongside the road. And it is garbage because it's not really relevant to where we are on this part of the journey. Now, if you think it's valuable, then it should be placed on a shelf somewhere.
mhm.
But you're just picking it up indiscriminately as we're traveling down this path, and
Yeah,
I'm losing our way. if I'm losing our way, how much are you losing your way as you're out there traveling
Yeah,
in your own mind?
and you're
And
dragging along a
that's right.
big backpack filled
Heavy
with all
load.
kind of stuff you don't need.
Yes, exactly. And it's
Just
hard for
drop it
people
off.
to, exactly, it's hard for people to believe that they can do that. But I want you to understand, why do you think that I need that to understand? I'm understanding just being on this path with you. So can you try it for the next 15 minutes? And it's become so habitual for so many people that it's so hard to let go.
Yeah,
And so we have to walk through that process and then go back, look at it, pick it up, and then do that routine that I was describing where we have to reinterpret it, rewrite that part of the story. It's time consuming, but it is so worth it to do that with people so that they can get released.
absolutely. And it's so beautiful when it happens because you can see their eyes opening up and they say, wait a minute, I don't need to do this. No, you don't.
Hallelujah.
Yeah,
So this has
hallelujah.
been this has been fun and lovely. What should we call our work together? What should we call our little series here that I think we ought to, keep on doing and
Oh
delivering?
yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to. And there's all kinds of subjects we could talk about. And I've done in the past. I've done a whole series in Dutch, of course, with another lady. Um, I'm writing a book right now. It's called
Okay.
Being Resilient.
Ah,
It's about resiliency. I think we have inbuilt resiliency,
of course.
and we don't use it, which is a shame. And I just wrote two more chapters last Monday, and I was inspired at something and go to and they're tiny chapters. It's a little book, but it is about trying to understand. Maybe we can call it about resilience, something like that.
I think that that sounds fabulous.
Okay, we just created a series of webinars.
Yay.
Deb.
Well, it's your recording, so you're going to have to label it. Are
Yeah.
you going to put this up on YouTube?
I'm going to put this up in YouTube. I'm going to send the raw data to you so you can use it as you like if you want to. So it's you can and I can also send you the copy I make. I'll put a front to it and a back to it.
Yeah, do
Uh,
it, do it. Yeah, yeah.
I'll look up your data. I'll put that in as well, and so people can relate to that if that's fun.
That sounds great, right? It's all on LinkedIn. So how about if so you're going to put this, how about if you put it up, what is your YouTube channel called?
It's called Swimida, my name, like
Okay.
it's positioned here in the bottom. Yeah,
Okay. So you'll put it up on YouTube and then you'll take and put a link onto LinkedIn
yeah,
and then
I,
I'll pick up your there and I'll put it on my LinkedIn
yeah, that's
and then
fine.
I'll go to your YouTube page and I'll pick up the link from there and put it on all my social media pages. And then I don't know that I need to do anything to the version that you create.
Okay, wonderful. I'll create it for you, and you can just pick it up. Fine, that's
For
excellent.
us, yeah,
Yeah.
that's great.
Okay,
So
wonderful.
I
I
guess
have I
it's
have a wonderful first starter for this,
okay.
which I created a few several quite some time ago, but I can add that to it.
So
Uh,
should we come back this time each week? Does this
yeah,
work out for you?
fine. Yeah, that's fine. Fine.
Hallelujah. So
Wonderful.
we'll promise our audiences week by week that we're going to continue.
Yeah, absolutely. And they can join if they want to. We'll just
Okay.
put our emails on the end of this video, and they can notify us that they want to join. That's fine. We can have them join
Okay.
us. Is that fine?
That sounds like fun.
Okay, wonderful.
All
Well,
right.
thank you, Deb. It was wonderful. It was amazing.
Thank you. It was amazing. All right, let's stop recording and then we could spend a minute with each other.